Good morning and welcome to the show. This is News Check on this, the 21st of November 2023. My name is Abdiaziz. Hashim. My co-anchor is Lensa Odingo. And this particular morning we'll be focusing on the effects of the ongoing El Nino rains. You do know it is a chilly morning here in the capital and in various parts of the country. The Deputy President, that is Rigathi Gachagua, placed the counties that has risen, that is being affected by the El Nino rains from 19 all the way to 33. What are the measures that are being put in place, not just from the national government, the county government and development partners as well as non-governmental organizations like the Red Cross? Will be picking the brain of one of our guests this particular morning in just a few. But we're also keeping an eye on various events here in the capital and across the country, also to give you an update on what is happening in regards to the El Nino rains in various parts of the country. You do know it has affected mostly the northern part of the country as well as the coastal region, and that is what we are discussing this morning. Joining the conversation, my name is Abdiaziz Hashim, one on all platforms as well as KBC Channel 1. Right now joining me is Oscar Onyango Okumu, a disaster manager at the Kenya Red Cross. Oscar, good morning and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Abdi.
Maybe we should start on that. Just give us a status update, given that I know you have the figures in hand. What is the outlook, especially in the northern part of the country and the coastal region, in regards to the El Nino rains?
Thank you, Abdi. And of course, right now the outlook is not really good. As we can see, the rains are enhanced. And of course, looking at the northeastern part and the coastal part of Kenya, where the effects are very high, we are having above 51,000 households affected there. But overall in the country, we are having about slightly above 75,000 households. And to an approximate number, we are having 75,000 and 12 households that have been affected. Out of these numbers, then we have about 30,195 households that have been displaced. And that shows
indefinitely
you,
or?
That is definitely.
Indefinitely?
Yes.
Okay.
And of course, when we are having these numbers affected, then there comes a number of things that come into place, like the needs that they have in those camps that they are settling in.
Yes. And I'm sure right now even Red Cross is in receipt of the number of people, given that we wait for that official communication, not just from the Red Cross, but the government itself. What is the figure of the death toll that Red Cross you're aware of as of now?
As at now, it's approximately slightly above 60.
Okay.
Yes, heading towards 71 as we await confirmation by the government to give us the exact numbers. Yeah.
And given that you have given us these staggering statistics, you've just said 75,012 households have been affected, 39,000 indefinitely. What is Red Cross, not just Red Cross, but given that you work with the national government and the county governments, what have you been able to do to at least help all these households?
Correct. Thank you so much. Kenya Red Cross being an auxiliary to the government, both at the national level and at the county level, we are having a number of interventions going on and cutting across all the way from shelter. We are having things around livelihoods. We are having health and public health in emergencies. And of course, very important is the wash aspect of it, where water and sanitation matters need to be put in place, especially for these people who are displaced and in the camps. Because you're seeing right now, the normal lives that they were having is now out of place. And they're looking at now then, what then should be done to ensure that at least they have the basic standards of living. And of course, at that point then I can tell you that Kenya Red Cross has already distributed about 8,000 non-food items to the people displaced. And we also have a number of interventions going on around the prepositioning of other emergency relief kits and materials. And of course, we are also having food distribution going around, especially in the northeastern part of the country, which has been highly affected and hit. And of course, around WASH, we are having hygiene promotion activities that are going on to ensure that the community members that are displaced in these camps are already having access to some clean water that they can utilize at their household level in those camps. Again, around livelihoods, we had done a number of preparedness measures in the beginning. And of course, we had done some food seeds distribution to the people who are living in areas that are deemed to be agricultural areas where they could plant these seeds and, of course, give them some yields. And again, we are looking at wash again. We are having about 2,050 households who have been given slabs, latrine slabs, that can support them in terms of, again, sanitation around those areas. Yes.
Given that you're taking all these particular measures, one will wonder, did we prepare enough for these El Nino rains at the get-go?
I would say that we prepared with regards to and in equal to the measure that we could. Because before that, when the KMD had given the announcement about the coming of these enhanced rains that we are seeing right now, then, of course, at that point, then we started putting the measures in place. And like I mentioned, working very closely with the government and other stakeholders. I remember we did a number of contingency planning sessions. And of course, we had done with Tana River County, we had done with Garissa, we did contingency plans with Wajir and Mandera, which myself facilitated that. Then we also did contingency planning meetings with the likes of Turkana, Baringo and West Pokot. And as you can see the outlook moving towards that direction, then it's very important that we had these preparedness measures. And of course, we also did preparedness measures around the distribution of seeds for planting, just in case the rains were not going to be as enhanced as they are. But of course, I can say that yes, as a country and humanitarian worker, then we needed to do much more preparedness with regards to community engagement, because yes, we are doing the high level preparedness, but then how do we get to the community members and now tell them that let's get prepared in this manner, let's move to this high area so that we are not highly affected based on such predictions that are coming. Yes. And
given that we have seen the devastating effects of Mother Nature, some of the roads especially linking to those counties that have been affected, how has Red Cross been able to navigate through that? Are you taking these foodstuffs that you're saying by the aircrafts or by road?
Correct. We had the preparedness measures, of course, when this was announced. Prepositioning of non-food items was done in strategic locations. Of course, looking at or foreseeing the issues around the roads that were being cut off. But now that they are cut off, of course, we are working again in collaboration with the government and other agencies to ensure that the food or items that are being taken to these people in the camps then are airlifted. And of course, the government has been very helpful towards that, and among other stakeholders such as the Airbus and other stakeholders who are owning flights here and there. Yes.
And of course, given that the distribution, not only from your side, but the national and the county governments have been doing, would you say, is there good political goodwill when it comes to at least ensuring that all hands on deck to ensure that these people and those communities affected get the necessary essentials they require?
Absolutely. And of course, the first priority of the government is usually to ensure that its people are well taken care of. And I must say that there is good political will. And looking at the counties that have been devastated and affected with the floods, of course, we are seeing the county governors coming out to support. And that is at the county government level. Looking at the national government level, you can see the number of meetings being held by the NDOC, being held by the deputy president, being held by the president, among others, in regards to these people that are affected, so that their lives can be better. Yeah.
And of course, the situation we're keeping an eye on. And of course, some of the counties that have been affected was initially 19. The deputy president has announced to 33. Have you been able to dispatch members of the Red Cross to those other affected counties?
Yes, Red Cross has its branches in all the 47 counties, and we have personnel in all these 47 counties. So the only thing that we do, apart from dispatching the surge teams that support from HQ and other regions that are not affected, is that we activate the teams that are on the ground. And with this activation, then we ensure that they engage the communities, understand their needs, and then now give us the feedback that is coming from there. So once they have an increased level of effects that they cannot manage at the county level, then it is upscaled to the regional level, because we have also regional offices. Then from there, when it's beyond the regional offices to manage, then now it's brought to the attention of the HQ. And then the HQ now, we have surge teams on standby who then are activated to go and support those particular areas that are highly affected.
Okay.
Yes.
We are still talking about the effects of the El Nino rains that has affected 33 counties. And of course, the latest figures that we have just received from Red Cross itself is that 75,012 households have been affected across the country, with the death toll slightly over 60. And of course, we still await more information, not just from those organizations, but as well as the committee that is being spearheaded by none other than Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, who addressed a few days ago in a statement stating that the counties have increased from 19 to 33 counties and placing the people who have been affected over 80,000 across the various counties. Now, some of the counties that have been affected, especially in the northern part of the country, includes Marsabit, Mandera, Garissa, Wajir, and in the coastal region, it is Lamu, Tana River, and Mombasa. We're still carrying on that particular conversation. Here with me in studio is Oscar Onyango Okumu. He is the disaster manager at Kenya Red Cross. And of course, Oscar, we were talking earlier about not just the effects that El Nino has had on households, the level of hygiene, which many, not just the health practitioners in the country, but the people who are affected are talking about it. Are there measures, have you seen, that are being put in place, not just by Red Cross, but the government and the county governments as well?
Yes, Abdi. Apart from the Red Cross conducting the hygiene promotion activities, like I mentioned, we are having the government through the CHVs, the community health volunteers, supporting in these health promotion activities. Of course, they are the experts when we link to the communities. Again, what we have seen is that we are having other organizations or stakeholders coming in to also give their support with regards to the hygiene promotion issues. And like I mentioned, already there is the hardware part of it, whereby we have tried to distribute a number of latrine slabs just to help in the sanitation matters. And of course, looking at what the government is doing, the government is trying as much as possible, even to set up medical outreaches, so that the basic health issues that are coming up can be addressed at this camp level, because of course we are aware that some of the health facilities have also been cut off.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what are some of the other short measures that have been put in place as we think of long-term measures, so that we can prepare? Also, you hear from the Kenya Meteorological Department is saying that it could even reach to that rate of being a super El Nino.
Yes. Of course, these are the response measures, the short-term measures, or the response measures, so to say. But then these short-term measures include hygiene promotion, like I mentioned, the medical outreaches, which have already been mapped together with the county Ministry of Health teams and the national level. And of course, this is in linkage to the contingency plans that were done by the health department, the Ministry of Health, so to say. And of course, through these contingency plans, we have the short-term activities that can be done in response to the current floods. And of course, when it increases, the contingency plan has room for up to where the weatherman is saying around January and above. And the long-term measures there will come in place after doing a very critical assessment that will then inform the long-term interventions. But now, looking at the short-term interventions, we are basically having these outreaches going on, so that the medical teams are reaching to the community members at the camps, and we are having the teams going around and doing the hygiene promotion matters around the affected camps.
And of course, when you reach the office, especially this particular morning, do you keep tabs on what the weatherman has given, especially in terms of predictions? You do know that right now KMD has given a new prediction that the rains will last until the end of January 2024. And of course, do you align your plans with the predictions of the weatherman?
Correct. We, as Kenya Red Cross, work very closely with the Kenya Meteorological Department, the KMD. And of course, being a response situation, we have a situation room set up. And this situation room, we have meetings every day in the morning and every day in the afternoon, just to get updates from what the weatherman is saying first. And then from there, we get the updates on what is happening on the ground with regards to this. And looking at what happened in Mombasa the other day, the weatherman had already predicted that there's some storm coming from the Indian Ocean, and that is going to affect the coast very highly. And at that time, you could realize that yes, the focus was on northeastern side of the country, and already it has given us a perception that let us now start looking at the coast. So whatever the weatherman is doing is very important, and we are in check with whatever they are doing on a daily basis in the mornings.
And of course, given that you've just mentioned an instance there in Mombasa, but out of the 33 counties, which has reached a critical stage out of the counties? We do know that Mombasa, it is in dire situation, but what other counties or are you focusing on?
Now, just before that, we were looking at, we had Mandera, we had Wajir, we had Garissa, then Tana River, because of the overflow from the river Tana itself. And now looking at the past 1 week, then we have the coastal counties now coming in, the likes of Kwale, the likes of Mombasa, and of course Lamu is also somewhere with these effects being dire. And then looking at the sides of the upper eastern side where we have Marsabit, we are also having issues around there because of the rains coming from Ethiopia. And now we also anticipate, just in line with what the weatherman is saying, we also anticipate that now it's moving towards inside the country, and we are going to see a number of effects coming into around the central area, and of course we are anticipating that it's going to spill into the Lake Basin areas. But then this then calls for preparedness measures, like we had done before. Then now what we do is that we activate the response plans that we had, and of course put them on standby, such that when it hits, then the effects will not be so much like we have seen in these northeastern counties and the coast counties.
And of course, we're not just looking at the issue of floods. We're also looking at dams breaking their banks.
Correct.
And what areas have you issued even an alert to alert the residents that this particular dam might break its banks, so you need to move to a higher ground?
The counties along the River Tana are being given an alert, and of course these alerts are coming from the dam management agencies, who then gives us daily updates. And like I mentioned to you, we get the daily updates from the different agencies, and of course here we have the KMD and also these ones that then manage the dams. And of course we have the levels of monitoring, the meters of this particular dam. So whenever they give a certain update, then of course they also trigger us and the other agencies to give communication back to the community members on the need to move to raised levels or just migrate from where they are, since the effects might pass with them.
We're also looking at not just measures from the national government, but the county as well. But what measures have you, not just measures, but what are the mishaps that you might have seen and you're currently rectifying? Because I'm sure along the way you still learn as well.
Correct. Usually responses are for learning day in, day out. And of course, we had learned from previous responses, and now within this response, we are already learning that there is need to have community engagement and accountability issues put in place. And what I mean by community engagement and accountability is that how do we do communication to the community members, and how do we engage them so that they give us also their communication and feedback with regards to what we are saying. Because for instance, you might go and tell the community members, move to higher grounds. Then we don't listen to them. For us, we have given the information. The question is, what higher ground is the community member going to move to? And we have not engaged them to understand that. And that is a gap that we might have missed on as the entire humanitarian perspective in general. Because at that point, when we listened to them, and probably they told us that we don't have grounds to move to, then already we could have been much prepared with the grounds where they were going to move to. And of course, the county governments, through the national government line of it, through the county commissioners, already had put up committees that had identified places that the camps could have been set in case of this scenario. But the beautiful thing would have been if the communities had told us that we prefer that if the rains come, then we might move this direction without making the decisions at the desk level, but going to the community themselves to understand what they want. And that is something that we are working on right now. In terms of our assessments, it's basically community informed. What do you need? So then they tell us that this is what we need, please support us with this. It's not a matter of just going with whatever you have and giving them. Sometimes you might find that they have no use for whatever you are giving them if you don't engage them rightfully.
Given that that is some of the assessments that you have been able to pick, also you work closely with some of the legislators. Is it something that you have told them to even create a legislative framework around it so that it can be tabled in Parliament and it can be passed?
Correct. There is this work that is going around the DRM bill. And of course, DRM then captures the bigger aspect of disasters, all the way from preparedness,
maybe for our viewers,
response,
what is the DRM?
and recovery.
What is the DRM?
The DRM is the Disaster Risk Management Bill. So it covers all the way from the preparedness part of it, coming into the response and to the recovery. So meaning, once we have this bill in place and it's passed, then it's something that can really help the country. And of course, Kenya Red Cross is part of the team that is supporting and facilitating this process together with the legislatures.
Where is it now? Is it in the first or second reading in Parliament? Are you aware?
I'm not really so much aware where it is, but I know it's somewhere being done, because I had a conversation about it yesterday.
And of course you have seen this particular conversations that are ongoing. Even leaders from not just the northern part of the country but in the coastal region now, they are saying that it is high time the president declares this El Nino rains as a national disaster. Maybe take us through, before even Red Cross or the national, the county government, given that all the stakeholders will be in that room before you inform the president to declare this particular issue a national disaster. Has it reached to that level? You're even considering to tell the president that it should be considered as a national disaster?
Now, Abdi, for it to be considered a national disaster, of course, we have thresholds that will be met. And this then sits squarely with the government to make. And of course, this committee is there to keep advising here and there. So from where I sit, I'm not able to say whether it's already a national disaster or not yet. But looking at it from my own perspective, then I think the moment it's beyond 33 counties that are affected,
and
then
slightly over 60 people dead.
And this is already above 50%, then the government should already start considering the thresholds and look at a way of making that announcement in a way or the other.
Given that in the drought situation, in just a few we'll be taking a break, but in 30 seconds, compared to the drought situation that you even helped the government to realize that it was a national disaster, before it was even declared a national disaster, what was your role there?
For the drought situation, of course, our role purely was also to give information to the government and work closely with the government as an auxiliary to ensure that those who are affected are also responded to in a similar way that we are doing right now. So we still play that auxiliary role to inform the government on the effects, but then it's the government to make the decision on its people. And of course, I'll duly inform you what are the functions of the president when it comes to declaring a state of emergency, not just in war, but declaring a national disaster following the wrath of Mother Nature that we have been able to witness in 33 counties. Carry on the conversation, both of course on and offline. We'll be back with that particular discussions with Oscar, but for now, we need to pay bills. We're coming back in a while. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Today the topic is the effects of the ongoing El Nino rains in 33 counties. Currently here with me in studio is none other than Oscar Onyango Okumu, a disaster manager at Kenya Red Cross. He was just giving us figures. If you're just joining us, let me run down across those particular figures that he gave us earlier in the morning. He said slightly over 60 people have been able to lose their lives. 75,012 households have been affected, with 39,000 people affected in
indefinitely or displaced indefinitely. And of course, these were similar figures that were given by none other than Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, who is steering that particular session with the county governments as well as non-governmental organizations and other development partners, not just to finance or resource this particular initiatives. You have seen the devastating effects of this particular El Nino rains in various parts of the country, with Mandera, Garissa, Wajir, Marsabit, Lamu, Tana River and Mombasa have been greatly affected, and we do have our reporter station in those particular areas who will be informing us duly. We're also keeping an eye on other stories making headlines, and we'll duly inform you on that as well. But as we're carrying out the conversation with Oscar here, Oscar, I forgot to ask you a very critical role that Red Cross plays when it comes to search and rescue. How many counties have you targeted, and how many people have been able to at least rescue?
Thank you, Abdi, for that. Looking at the situation of the floods, the rains come, probably people are just sleeping in the house, then
yes,
they are washed away together with their children. Then this calls for search, because people are already missing. And of course, the Kenya Red Cross is coming in to support. We have boats that have been positioned in the coastal part of the country. We have another boat positioned in the northeastern part of the country, specifically in Garissa, whereby then you might find people just going out through the livelihood activities such as fishing. Then they are stuck in the middle of the river. The Red Cross has come in very handy. I think you could have seen some picture. I saw you airing one here where the Red Cross team are on the boats. Those are some of the boats that we use to do the search and rescue and just help people here and there who have been affected. So for the number of counties that we have targeted with search and rescue, basically we are already at targeting the northeastern and the coastal part of it. And like I mentioned, we are also looking at how then should the prepositioning be done in West Kenya, so that at least when the effects reach that side of the country, we are ready for those kind of responses. And
of course, as in regards to the search and rescue operations, which county have you also greatly allocated more resource because of the dire situation that is currently in?
I would say we are in Garissa because of the Tana River. And of course, we are also very much with the search and rescue in Tana River County. Again, because of the same Tana River basin. Then we have now Mombasa coming in with the kind of floods that we saw 2 days ago coming in place. Of course, those are some of the three counties I would say the search and rescue is really and highly targeting.
And of course, you just intonated earlier that with those particular counties, especially on the northern part of the country, in the coastal, they might trickle into the central part of the country, especially here in the capital. We have not witnessed those situations that have been witnessed in Mombasa. Do you think Nairobi has done enough, especially in unclogging the drainage systems, so that they can prepare for that situation if it arises?
Of course, I won't say it has done much, but what I would say is that the preparations have been done to the extent to which they could. But of course, up to now, as we are speaking, Kenya Red Cross team from the Nairobi County branch are supporting the county government in ensuring that a lot of the rivers and drainage systems are being unclogged. And I know you have seen some photos going around the Kenya Red Cross teams trying to help in unclogging some of these areas that I'm mentioning. So yes, the capital city is being looked into critically. And of course, I know sometimes we might say that the preparedness are not as we expect they should be, but then Mother Nature is also Mother Nature. You never know the quantity which it will come with, but then the preparedness are up to the levels that we could consider that we were supposed to do.
Because in Mombasa we have seen the reason as to why it's flooding is because also the drainage systems are still unclogged by all the dirt that we normally throw it in those particular drainage systems. And of course, have you been able to take this particular issue with the governor himself? As the Nairobi team have they been able to take up with the governor?
I think
so as to prepare the situation?
I think when we are looking at the national aspect of it, then sometimes we forget to dive into the the county level part of it. But we have our county coordinator at Nairobi branch, whom I'm very sure is sitting in the committee at the Nairobi County which deals with the issues around floods. And that is one thing that then I know the governor already gets updates around. So I would say that we have linkages with the governor in that. Yes.
And of course, I'm sure you have seen what has been happening in the last 24 hours with leaders from not just Northeastern but the coastal region have been asking, given that the government and the county government held first conversations with the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, that is Professor Onyango, in terms of allocating funds, was placed between 8 to 10 or 15 billion there so as to be able to at least mitigate the situation. From the Red Cross side, have there been challenges of allocations so that you can carry out your mandate?
Of course, resources with regards to response to floods are a bit strenuous, and I'm talking of financial resources. And of course, right now we are at the verge of trying to ask for well-wishers here and there to just bring some funds that will help us then action the response plans that we are having. And we have the International Federation of the Red Cross coming in to give us support. They already activated some kind of DREF, which is the Disaster Response Emergency Fund. The DREF, it's abbreviated as DREF. So then this DREF, then we are now looking at how then do we upscale it to an appeal that then probably runs into the longer term of about 6 months, being that this will then dive into January based on the weatherman predictions. Again, looking at resource mobilization, yes, the government is really in support to Kenya Red Cross, giving the much needed material support. And of course, you have seen the government supporting the Kenya Red Cross with airlifting of food, and even in some counties they are giving trucks to load this food to where they're supposed to be. So the government is really supporting the Kenya Red Cross with regards to this, and we are looking at a scenario whereby we can have more allocation to go into this so that we can really give the support that is necessary and as required by the community members. Yes.
What are some of the non-foodstuffs that you're currently giving to the communities that are being affected?
The non-foodstuffs that we are giving include tarpaulin. Tarpaulin is that tent that we use to just make the makeshift tent. And we also give them kitchen sets that has some sufurias, the basic that are used for cooking. And then we also give them blankets, at least to give them warmth and cover themselves. Then we have jerry cans to ensure that they fetch clean water. We also have wash materials such as the slabs I mentioned, and of course we are having also the water treatment tubs that we give to ensure that they have clean water, which they utilize with this particular jerry can. And of course we give them soap to ensure that they also maintain their physical hygiene at these camps.
And given that you do know the season that we're in, it was a harvesting season and most of the farmers were able to at least reap what they sowed at the end of the day. But you were saying earlier you have offered the same communities seedlings. Were they to plant them, or seedlings that they used to, like let's say maharagwe, the beans? Is it to cook, or do you want them planted? Especially given the conditions that we have right now, is it even the right time to start going back to the farms?
Yes, Abdi, I would answer that in a very funny way.
Yes.
And this is the answer. When we have the weatherman projecting that the rains are coming at an enhanced level, then of course, while doing a contingency plan, then you already now start looking at what is the best case with these rains. And of course, the best case will give you that the rains will just come and then it will be the normal rains. Then we use that normal rains to plant. And we have the moderate case, and then we have the worst case scenarios. All these have thresholds. So looking at the best case, then having some of the counties, and not particularly the counties that are currently affected. We have the counties such as, we have Kitui, we have Laikipia, who have been given these seeds. These are counties that we are not foreseeing those areas being affected by floods, but then the rains are enhanced in these areas. So how do we make good use of these particular rains. And that is where by now we gave the seeds for planting and not for eating. For eating, we have food distributions in other areas. Yes.
And indeed, given that especially in the capitals, I'm sure in Mombasa, the team there have been able to inform you, given that especially in the informal settlements, is that where you're focusing, especially when it comes to hygiene awareness in these major cities like Kisumu, Nairobi and Mombasa? Because you do know what happens in the slum areas. They do have open toilets, so the sanitation there, it's a little bit worse for wear compared to other parts of the country.
Very, very true. Looking at the major cities, the focus is basically on these informal settlements. And of course, again, looking at where we have high populations that are prone to the effects.
Yes.
And the informal settlements, of course, will come number one into that. Then, of course, we have those flat areas, though not informal but flat, and we have a huge population settling there. So those are areas that we would want to target. But again, like I mentioned, for this case now, if we have, let's say, for example, Mombasa already having camps that are set up where the displaced persons have gone to, then our key or primary target are these people who are displaced. Yes, so we target them with those hygiene promotion messages. Yeah.
And of course, as Red Cross, I'm sure you have been able to sit down with stakeholders, especially in the disaster management sector. Have you ever been recommending to the government, especially for the building of more dams? Will building more dams at least prepare us properly for such kind of situations that we're currently in?
Now, yes, these are conversations that we have been having because floods have been perennial in Kenya, and we already know, we almost have a map of where floods can affect when it comes. So for long-term interventions, and of course these are now recovery interventions and they will lead into preparedness measures. Yes, dams would be a good thing to do. And again, one thing that is really recommended in these sittings that we have with the stakeholders is water harvesting plans. Because look at the kind of water we are seeing flowing off or running off into the Indian Ocean, into the lakes. What if this water was harvested? Having a case of Northeastern. Northeastern is known for drought. Right now, they are the highest affected by the floods.
Very true.
Look at a scenario whereby then the stakeholders could have come together and say, okay, let us build a dam that would then hold this run of water. And one, this would then prepare the people that when the flood comes, then it's not going to affect them and it's going to run into the dams. Number two, when the drought comes, then the northeastern part has water to access. And looking at the government in place right now, we are looking at agriculture as our main pillar in the country. And then if we have this dam set up with all this water, how good would it be with now irrigation systems in place? If we then have stakeholders coming together with the government and doing such mega structures, then it would be a nice thing that would help the country in terms of mitigating disasters as well as putting us to a better level with regards to our outcome in agriculture.
Aside from the government, have been able to engage communities, given that you work with communities in terms of water harvesting at their level as well, because it should be a community responsibility to ensure that we do not let this water go to waste.
Actually, you have heard me mentioning a lot about community engagement and accountability. And whatever I'm mentioning right now are some of the views that we get from the communities once they are affected. And just in the past few months, we were handling drought. So when you go to Mandera, I was personally in Mandera doing a post-distribution monitoring. And then you hear some of the views from these community members that, guys, right now we are suffering from drought. This water that runs off during floods, could we then do something big that would help us harvest the water? But then at that point, then you see there is no emergency, so nobody feels that that is a big need or a priority at the moment. But then we need to change gears and see. The communities are informing us of this. What can we do firsthand to ensure that then this is done and help us mitigate these disasters in the near future?
And also, given that we're still in this particular period, but what are the post effects are we looking at? Because sometimes we focus on the now and we forget the later. What are some of those post effect measures that you're putting in place right now?
Right now, The post effects, I would say, will be informed by an assessment, which is known as the Kenya Interagency Rapid Assessment,
yes,
which is abbreviated as the KIRA. So the KIRA usually gives us the gaps where they are, and then now it gives us the long-term interventions. And like you had me mention, it's a multi-agency assessment.
Yes.
So at that point, then the agencies can come in and stakeholders would say, then our team, let's pick this and run with it in the long term. And that would be then where now your question comes in, that what are then the long-term measures that are being put in place. So the assessment will definitely inform. But for Kenya Red Cross at the moment, already, like I told you, pre-positionings have been done.
Yes.
And of course, we are already looking at engaging these communities to inform us on what are the needs that they see that should be done in the long term for them. Yes.
And of course, that is Oscar currently explaining what the Red Cross has been able to do on the effects of the El Nino rains that are currently ongoing in various parts of the country. We're not just looking at the 33 counties affected, but Oscar is saying that all these particular counties that are within the central region, they also need to prepare themselves, especially here in the capital, when it comes to unclogging the drainage system. You have me witnessed, especially in the informal settlements of this great county, we have seen a number of floods, especially in those areas of the informal sector. Even Oscar is saying that the sanitary levels, they have created awareness, so they have to be at least been leveled up. You do work closely with the Ministry of Health. What is MOH targeting right now, aside from the sanitary, the hygiene level, especially in those areas? What are the other areas that the Ministry of Health is looking at? Because we're looking at the psychological effects of it all.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you so much. We have a number of areas that the Ministry of Health is looking at, of course, in collaboration with the Kenya Red Cross. We have a health department also working closely with the Ministry of Health. And of course, what they're looking at right now, apart from hygiene promotion, basically the cases of outbreaks, the waterborne diseases coming up. And of course, we have a public health and emergencies team that is really ensuring that is done appropriately in terms of preparedness, and together with the Ministry of Health at the counties and at national level. Again, we are looking at mental health cases, like you've mentioned. You had a beautiful home today, then in the evening it's swept away.
Very true.
Of course, your mind must be affected and dislocated in one way or the other. Not dislocated physically, but emotionally dislocated from its normal functioning. Then that already needs a lot of psychosocial counseling. So together with the Ministry of Health, we are having counselors in place, and of course through the Red Cross 1199, that is the number one can call to get psychosocial support through our teams, and it's a 24-hour hotline that runs through, is run by our team. And of course we have the Ministry of Health personnel also coming in to support here and there.
Yes.
Another thing that the Ministry of Health is looking at currently is right now the children and women who are lactating then have a problem because they don't have the regular access to food that they need to have on a regular basis. And at that point then you realize that there is need to look at issues around malnutrition. And of course, like I mentioned, that is where then we now have the integrated health outreaches being set up so that all these services can be put together to the reach of these community members who are affected. Yes.
And of course, talking of the children, we even heard from the PS, right now they'll be at home for 2 months.
Correct.
What is Red Cross doing, especially with the community, to ensure that these kids, as much as the floods are ongoing, they are kept busy doing an activity?
Correct. We have, as the Red Cross, usually membership drives, and it's open to everyone. And of course, looking at the youthful group.
Yes.
And the youth are very important in this country, by the way, and of course not even in the country, in the world. And these are people who are energetic. And with regards to response, if you look at our photos that are going around and the videos, then you realize that most of them who are responding are basically the youth. So the children then who are now getting into the youth need to be engaged on how then they can inform and support the parents and the elderlies way back at home. So then these can be our foot soldiers at the household level. And there is that need of then, yes, to educate these youth on the importance of keeping safe around floods, or what to do when a flood situation arises.
Yes.
So at the household level, we are sure that then they will inform the parents or the elderly on what can be done because of the energy levels they have. So it's an important area we need to look into, engaging the youth to help us also mitigate the effects of the floods. Yeah.
And of course, aside, given that you are a disaster manager, aside from the property that have been lost, the post-harvest lost, do you tabulate how much money people have been able to lose, so that when, I do know that you work closely with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, when they carry out the census, these are informations they rely on. Do you tabulate how much people have lost so that you can inform in the coming census?
That really links to the livelihoods of the people. There are normal livelihoods that they were having with regards to businesses, but then I won't tell you that we then go into tabulating the loss that have been there with regards to the money. But then what we do is just check. This person had a business running in terms of a shop. The shop has been washed away. How can the person be supported to restart? Then at that point, that is where you realize we have the component of cash and voucher assistance, which is abbreviated as CVA. So the CVA really comes in then to support rejuvenating livelihoods of the people that have been affected with regards to their businesses. And of course, in the northeastern parts, the livelihoods are the animals and the livestock. These livestock they keep. So such a person losing, probably somebody loses 1,000 heads of shots. Then this somebody will then need really to be supported to just restart his livelihood once again. But then we don't quantify as Kenya Red Cross and measure that this is the particular monetary value that has been lost. That will leave for the Statistics Bureau to handle. And of course, given that I'm sure you'll be writing a post-analysis report once this particular floods end, but what are the key areas you will be focusing on, and you might have seen, given that you have been on the ground in various parts of the country? Like I mentioned, the key areas that we are focusing on right now, and we will need to focus on in the near future, is basically, like I mentioned, issues around shelter. And we have issues around water, sanitation and hygiene. We have issues around livelihoods, just like we have discussed. And again, we have issues around let's say, sanitation I'd mentioned, but we have issues around now the businesses. That how then do these people recover back to their normal business systems? But up and above all those, then we also need to do thorough community engagement, so that it is them who informs us that this is what you guys can focus on. And like I mentioned, the assessments that will be done will help us so much in that.
Given that you work closely with the Kenya Meteorological Department, this thing is also morphing to La Nina. Are we also prepared for that?
Of course, they have mentioned that quite some time. And of course, looking at that, then the stakeholders are already coming into place. Like we are now responding to the flood situation. Then already we need to start looking at what is the outlook after this. Are we ready for the same? And like I mentioned, the issues around dams that we were discussing. If you look at that, then that should already be a preparedness measure in case La Nina comes in with regards to after the situation that we are facing right now. And of course, that is the current situation. We'll continue conversing in just a bit. But if you're just joining us, we're still talking about the effects of the El Nino rains. Some of the figures that we have been able to be given by Oscar this morning is that we have over 8,000 non-food items that have been able to be transported to various parts of the country. There are currently prepositions reliefs that are ongoing in the 33 affected counties, hygiene promotion, and of course the seed distribution that are targeting the areas that have not been greatly affected by the El Nino rains, of course capitalizing on vegetation, and 2,050 latrine slabs that have been able to be put in place. And of course they're working closely with the community health volunteers, especially when it
it comes to shelter, water, sanitation, hygiene and businesses affected, and the community engagement. Yesterday, you heard the unfortunate incident that happened in Wajir in terms of a chopper crash. One was the Kenya Defence Forces chopper that crashed on Monday during the takeoff in Wajir County. The chopper was supplying food items to flood-affected families in Buna Town, Wajir North constituency. Earlier, you heard from Oscar as well. They were saying that they make this particular food items airborne so that it can reach the affected areas. You do know that the roads are impassable in those 33 counties. Now, several people, including the pilots and teachers who are on board, are still nursing injuries. We'll be getting that latest information from that particular end. Also, the other chopper in the same county was carrying, that is Arabajan MCA Abe Jimale, who crashed at the Wajir airport runway on Monday as well while taking off. Police have confirmed that the Prime Aviation helicopter registration 5YSDL was piloted by Captain Kiroken and Captain James Ndiragu. Of course, we wish them a quick recovery. These are some of the measures that the government have been able to put in place in terms of not just the capitation, but some of the strategies. Let me go back to Oscar in terms of the airlifting some of these products to the affected counties. Have you gotten enough support from the Kenya Defence Forces, given that they were directed by the executive as well as the National Police Service, if they have those choppers?
Yes, Abdi. I would say that we have gotten adequate support with regards to that, even though we still need more and more support, because you can see the numbers keep rising. And
Yes.
of course, it means that then the support that is needed then also keeps expanding. So like I mentioned, one, we still need that physical and airlifting support. Again, we also need more and more support in terms of finances to do these things, because we have volunteers on the ground who needs personal protective equipment to use with regards to wading through these waters to get to access the community members who are probably marooned and also in the camps. So there is still need for some support, and what I can say right now is that the government, through the KDF and through the Deputy President's Office, has done a lot to support. Yeah.
And of course, given that I'm sure people are calling you, you work with the community closely. I know they're asking you the questions of, have you been able to identify our loved ones? Have their bodies been recovered? Are those efforts being put in place, given that not just Red Cross, but the relevant agencies that are carrying out, I'm sure they're reaching out to your department. Are you able to ensure that those loved ones get the bodies of their lost ones?
Correct. And this I will give you with regards to a particular thematic area that we have in the disaster management unit, which is basically the restoring family links, which is known as tracing in some aspects. So we have a tracing unit that then usually helps in ensuring that lost family members are reunited. And this usually in the long-term programming, we usually have it around the refugee operations and population movement. So in this response particularly, what we are doing is that the same teams who facilitate tracing of lost persons during long-term programming are the ones who are being activated now to support us in ensuring that the family members who have probably reported their people missing and dead then are helped to trace back these particular family members with regards to the situation where they are at the moment.
You have just mentioned one of the most vulnerable communities in this particular country, the refugees. Is Red Cross working closely, given that most of those refugees are located in those areas that are greatly affected?
Yes, we have teams in the refugee operations camps, and of course with this I'm talking about Dadaab and also Kakuma, and of course we have fully functional teams in those areas who have been trained on how to handle the floods matters, and of course we also have them doing contingency plans that they did in the past months before the floods came in. So this particular population in the country of the refugees are well catered for with our teams in those camps. Yes.
And of course, given that it is Red Cross, I'm sure you have safety drills. Have you been able to put them in place and teach the affected communities on how to evade the current situation?
Yes, we have done, and like I mentioned, during the preparedness phase, there were a lot of these drills and of course simulations around floods. You know, sometimes flood is not something that you can do a drill about, but then we do simulation exercises.
Yes.
So with this, we moved into about around 30 counties doing trainings for the teams that we call Red Cross Action Teams. We abbreviate them as RCATs. So these teams involve volunteers from the community as well as volunteers from the Red Cross offices. So then they were trained and they could go into swimming pools just to demonstrate how then could we help in retrieving bodies or handling ourselves in a scenario of floods. Yeah, so it's something that has been done, a simulation exercise and not really a drill. Yes.
And to effectively prepare, especially for your department, and also to advise the teams that are on the ground, did you carry out an analysis or comparison on what happened back in 1997 and 1998 in the current one? Is this current one, has it reached that level of the initial one in 1997?
Of course, that analysis at the Red Cross level, I would say we depend much on what is done by the KMD, because they are the agency that now informs the weather patterns and looking at the different situations, and of course give us that analysis. So while we depend so much on them, then for us it's to look at probably these numbers that are affected, the counties that are being affected. How did we respond at that time? What were the lessons that we had learned? And of course, I mentioned to you sometime earlier that in the past responses, we have had lessons learned and we have put them in action towards this particular response. And we are seeing that it's at least helping us to respond smoothly to these affected community members. Again, what I would say about that comparison is that, yes, with regards to the numbers that we were having in the past, I would not say that we have reached there, but we are headed there. Because looking at this prolonged period up to January 2024, then we are headed to probably surpassing that. And if we look at the weatherman predictions that they have given, the millimeters of rains are way much above. Like today we were getting an update of somewhere about 400%, which is a very high figure in terms of percentage, beyond 100%. Yes.
And in terms of the comparison you've just highlighted in the El Nino rains, we do know that also the distribution are still ongoing as we speak in those affected counties. I can even see some of the counties of Mombasa, Wajir, Mandera, Garissa, as well as Lamu. This is the conversation that we're currently having in terms of what are the measures that are being put in place to at least alleviate some of these residents that have been affected. Over 70,000 of households have been affected, with 39,000 homes indefinitely affected, and some of the measures that the Red Cross as well as the office of the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua is taking, given that he is the one who is spearheading this particular initiative, and of course more support when it comes to the area of distributing food and non-food items. And in terms of facilitation, you've just highlighted not just the International Red Cross, but have we also seen development partners playing a key role in this situation?
Of course, yes, the development partners are to some level coming in, but then they need to come in, of course, mostly during the recovery phase. But we have also seen them coming in or showing interest to support. And we have various corporations here and there who are looking at then how do they give the financial support to Kenya Red Cross to enable us reach down to the community members. So I would say that yes, some of the development partners are already looking at ways of supporting, but then usually they try as much as possible to come during the recovery phase, where we need a lot of developmental activities to take place. Yes,
especially for those particular roads that have been affected in those areas and some of the bridges. But in terms of recommendation in your department, is there a way that it can be recommended so that the Red Cross cannot wait every time for the government to provide choppers and other means to distribute food items, in terms of budgetary allocation from the national government itself? Is it something that you have been able to talk with the national government, this current government as well?
Yes, that is a discussion that is ongoing and has been ongoing. And of course, I would say that the government, the current government, is really having goodwill towards ensuring the community members are really alleviated from suffering, and the effects of disasters are mitigated. So like you had some time back, the president himself, Dr. William Ruto, had mentioned that he is allocating some money on a yearly basis to ensure that Kenya Red Cross is on a good financial position to support. Then of course, what I would say is that, yes, a recommendation is that probably there needs to be a discussion to further increase how then the funds are probably directed to Kenya Red Cross to ensure that the support that Kenya Red Cross gives to the community is fully maximized. Yes.
And of course, we do know that the national government as well as the county government do have disaster management kitty. Is it high time that those kitties are allocated and they're not redirected? Because we know most of the time they're redirected for developmental purposes. Should we learn from this that we should not redirect these monies, especially when it comes to drought, and especially right now with the El Nino and the oncoming La Nina?
Yes, that is something that is very important, Abdi. And of course, I spoke of the disaster risk management bill some time back, and this is one thing that then would be addressed by that bill when it is passed. So what I would say is that a recommendation is that then the legislatures need to focus on ensuring that this bill is materialized. Then from there it will guide on to how then the allocations are made with regards to the disaster or response funds. Yes.
And is the bill also recommending, especially to your department, does it give you more roles to be carried out, especially in this kind of situations?
Yes, I would say so, but not specifically more roles, but then just more ways to work with the government to ensure that community members are supported, to ensure these effects are minimized. So it's not really more roles, but then how do we then work better with the government to ensure that disasters are managed and mitigated? Yes.
And of course, in terms of, we can see most of the rescue centers that you're placing, the affected communities are mostly in schools. And we also know that the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education are still about to be finished in just a few days. But the issue when it comes to not just the examinations, but the learners themselves, when they come back to those classrooms, will they be in a condition that is conducive for their learning?
Of course, I mentioned earlier that the county government and the national government, through the county commissioners in the county, have committees, and it's particularly the county teams, and of course I would specify down to the education sector, that identified these camps, and there are guidelines that are in place with regards to utilization of these specific facilities as camps. And these guidelines, I know they really outline then how do we exit and how do we ensure that they are in the right state of utilization when the students come back in. It's just our hope that by the time the students are resuming somewhere around January, then we will have subsidy, the floods might have subsided a bit, and then we have room for the students to go back to their classrooms and study.
And of course, 2 months they'll be at home. Even the Red Cross clearly stated that they'll be engaging the communities so that they can create activities. They're also welcoming volunteers, especially this time, given that it is all hands on deck. And to that particular question, do you have enough personnel to help you in at least mitigate this situation? Do you have enough people on the ground?
Right now, Red Cross has the capacity to mitigate the situation. We have staff spread all over the 47 counties, and we have a huge vast of volunteers also spread across the country and in all the counties to support us mitigate this. And of course, like I mentioned to you earlier, that from the HQ level, we also have the surge teams who are ready to just go in to support in any county that might lack technical expertise, just to give technical guidance. But then the human resource in the counties are adequate. Yes.
And of course, given that we're entering the penultimate stage of this particular show, what are the key recommendations are you likely to make to the national government and the county governments, especially at the county assemblies, given that you work closely with these leaders?
Yes, some of the key recommendations through the discussions we have had all through I started sitting here. One is the issue around the DRM bill. It needs to be accelerated so that we already know that Kenya is having perennial floods and droughts. Once we are finished with floods, then we are very sure we are going to drought.
Yes.
So if this passes, then I know we will be in a better place to know that what is the direction to take with regards to whatever is coming in our way. Secondly is a recommendation that is leaning towards the Kenya Red Cross and of course to alleviate human suffering with regards to financing. We need to find ways of stakeholders coming together and giving funds towards supporting these particular initiatives and response activities. Another recommendation that I would highly make is that once we are doing these responses,
yes,
then to all stakeholders and to the government and to everyone out there, what are the voices of the community members?
Yes.
What do they say? What should we do? So that these voices can guide our work in terms of ensuring, number one, they are resilient, and number two, they are safe. Yes.
And also to cope with the situation on the ground.
Correct.
And of course, given that we are winding up in just a few, to inform our dear viewers, we do have the latest figures from Red Cross, and of course we're still awaiting on the office of the Deputy President, that is Rigathi Gachagua, who normally give statements when it comes to this particular situation, spearheaded by him, and of course in bodies like the Kenya Red Cross as well as the Kenya Meteorological Department, flanking him and informing him on what grounds or what are the dire areas that they need to focus on, especially right now that it has risen to 33 counties. We're still getting the latest from various counties, and we'll duly inform you in our subsequent bulletins what is happening, especially in the northern part of the country and in the coastal region that have been greatly affected. Just to name of those particular counties are Mandera, Garissa, Wajir, Marsabit, Lamu, Tana River and Mombasa. And of course, Oscar has just informed us there is a likelihood, especially in those lakeside cities like the Kisumu, Busia, in various other parts, and Homa Bay as well, that host major dams in those particular areas. We could likely see some of those dams overflowing, and some of those measures have been outlined here, and of course some of the guidelines can be found, and there is enough civic education that has been carried out by Red Cross in terms of food distribution from the national government to the county government, as well as Red Cross and other non-governmental organization has been ramped up in various areas, especially when it comes to shelter, water, sanitation, hygiene, and some of the businesses affected, which is on the post-analysis report that Oscar was saying they need to table it before the respective leaders so that they can take those actions. Over 8,000 non-food items have been also been taken to those affected regions. The prepositions reliefs that also been taken up, the hygiene promotion by distributing latrine slabs, 2,050 of them in those affected counties, and they're also closely working with the community health volunteers in ensuring there is no outbreak of this particular waterborne diseases. And right now we do know that those conditions even create for mosquitoes to breed and create the situation of where we'll see malaria also cases rise, given that it is among the killer disease in our country. And so those are some of the measures that are being taken by Red Cross, and we'll duly inform you in our subsequent bulletins. But as we wind up, Oscar, what will you advise, not just the people who have been affected, but those that are yet to be affected by these rains?
Yes, to those who are yet to be affected, one, to the county governments whom we work in auxiliary to, there is need to check what the contingency plans that they had made,
yes,
what the contingency plans are saying, and really work around that in terms of preparedness. Secondly, to the community members, it's just that there is need to keep watch and be alert, and also keep checking on your relatives here and there so that you just ensure they are safe. And again, you can always reach to Kenya Red Cross on 1199 just to give information around any floods effects that you are experiencing. And again, we have our offices in all the counties where you can reach to and give information or seek information.
Maybe lastly on the evacuation, we've just talked to one of the most vulnerable communities, especially the refugee, but we are also forgetting the elderly. What are you doing also to evacuate those elderly especially?
Yes, I had mentioned in the discussion somewhere that we are working closely with the youth, the energetic youth as our volunteers who make a big percentage of our volunteers. So these are people that then come from the particular community members that are affected. And of course, we have informed them on how then they need to ensure that these elderly are evacuated with regards to floods. And again, of course, through community engagement, we have tasked our volunteers to go out there and just inform them on the need of going to safer places. And safer places in this case, I would mean that if you have a relative who is staying in a safer place, then it's better the elderly are transferred to such places for their safety. Yeah.
It is 47 minutes past the hour. We're about to conclude this particular program, but don't go too far. We're taking a short commercial break, but we'll be back in a moment, given that Oscar will be giving a closure or the final remarks to the discussions that we are having this morning. Don't go too far. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. And of course, the conversation continues. It is the effects of the El Nino rains. First of all, we do sympathize with those people who have been affected, and condolences to the family who have been able to lose their loved ones. The government as well as non-governmental organizations are currently working to ensure that they bring those bodies of those people who are yet to be found, especially those two KRA officers who lost their dear lives at the coastal region, visiting the particular area. But the figures, let me just give you one more time, is that we do have over 70,000 households that have been affected, over 30,000 that have been indefinitely affected. The number of deaths currently slightly over 60 as we await for the relevant bodies to inform us on the current situation. We normally get updates not just from the head's office of the Deputy President, but the Kenya Red Cross as well as the government agencies, including the Office of the Inspector General of Police and other agencies that are currently keeping an eye on the situation, and also the county governments as well. We saw yesterday there were GIA governor in the capital, at least taking food items and non-food items to that particular region, despite the mishap that was seen on the choppers that crashed in those areas. But thankfully nobody was lost their lives, but others were rushed to the local hospital. But as we are entering the final stage of our conversation, I want to hand it over to Oscar, who is a disaster manager at the Kenya Red Cross. Oscar, your final remarks to the people who are watching you right now.
Thank you so much, Abdi, for this time we have had the discussion.
Yes.
And the final remark, first of all, to the people who are watching, especially the stakeholders and the partners, is that we hope that this information then helps us to support the affected community members. And again, we also hope that the community members who are currently watching then are able to take the measures required to ensure their safety when we come to a scenario whereby now the floods effects are reaching to them. And of course, with this, I would say that then the community members need to have already mapped areas that they can move to that are safer than where they are staying. And of course, they also need to, through the local authorities, have identified areas such as places where they can set camps, and the local authorities in those particular places would then advise. Again, like I mentioned, the community members should feel free to contact the Kenya Red Cross offices in all the 47 counties that we are having, just in case they see any effects of floods that they need to report. Again, I mentioned that we have already a toll-free line or a hotline that they can call through to report these effects. And of course, this is 1199, which doesn't require any airtime for calling. So once somebody sees that, they can easily report to Kenya Red Cross, who then will do a quick investigation and respond appropriately through the county teams. Again, to the people who are affected, we really and sincerely sympathize with them. It's really a hard time for them, economic-wise, and again, looking at now what is happening with regards to mental health. Again, with regards to mental health, I would also recommend that they should also feel free to call the 1199. They will be redirected to our psychosocial support teams, who will then give them just a quick PSS to enable them move through these hard times. So we appreciate the time you have given us, and of course we are asking the community members who are affected that just hold on a bit. Help is coming your way. And of course with that, then it calls also to the stakeholders that please give us more financial support to enable us deliver this help to the community members. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That is Oscar Onyango, Okumu, a disaster manager at Kenya Red Cross. Thank you for giving us your time, and of course we wish your team as well as Kenya Red Cross itself, as you are carrying out this vital role, especially right now we're experiencing El Nino rains in 33 counties. We're still awaiting the communication from the Deputy President's office and other relevant government agencies to inform us on the current or the latest figures that we are looking at and the response measures that have been put in place. That marks the end of our show on this, the 21st of November 2023. My name is Abdiaziz Hashim. My co-anchor has been Lensa Odingo, but don't go too far. Up next is Kurunzi and Tamrini, and none other than Nancy Okwara is already in studio. We'll be carrying on with the conversation. Do keep it KBC, and good morning for now.